Hello, this is Rudy Giuliani with America's Mayor Live, and tonight we've got a panel and a wonderful panel of just terrific people. There's Andrew Giuliani, and there's Dr. See, there I have to go.
Well,
It's a little opposite. There's
yeah.
Maria. I'm going to be like Biden, and this is my wife. This is my sister.
I know.
This is
I'm usually to your
my
left.
daughter. This is my daughter.
I'm usually to your left when
So
we're in studio.
we only on this show. I want to assure you, we don't get complicated. Two pronouns. That's it. Two pronouns. The female-looking one is Dr. Maria. The male-looking one is Andrew Giuliani. Okay. Now see how much easier it is if you don't get into that woke crap. All right. So we were going to start off with the freeloaders of Europe, but instead we're going to start off with, well, Mayorkas.
Breaking news.
Now, there's somebody here who I have to let her go first because she really hates this guy. I mean, it's like deep. We went to a we went to a
It's a 9/11
we went to a
ceremony.
9/11 ceremony, which a first time at a 9/11 ceremony. She's a very, very, very well,
It's a civil
very
occasion. It's
nice
so
lady.
used
Never
as a civil
caused any
occasion.
trouble. And she said, as she saw him, she said, "I'm going to really tell that liar off." So now you tell us what happened.
Well, I didn't. You may be exaggerating a wee bit. I sincerely wanted to talk to him about the border crisis because Rudy and I, on our variety of his shows and on Uncovering the Truth, have talked about the southern border for 2.5 years. That's all we're talking about. And I don't understand it, how anyone can let this happen to the United States of America. So when I saw him, it was after the ceremony, I believe, not before. And I was
started talking to him,
very
and
respectful, but
you looked down at him.
I look, well, he's shorter than I am, but I didn't look down at him. But I did want to talk about the border crisis. And I started talking about the cartels. Remember, it was right around this time where he testified in Congress that he didn't know about the bracelets that the illegal aliens were wearing coming in. He didn't know or at least he said that to me. And he said that to Congress, that he had no idea the cartels were running the border and he didn't know anything about the bracelets. And I wanted to talk to him about fentanyl poisonings and the sex trafficking happened at the border. He told me flat out, he had these vacant eyes. I do have to say that, like nothing was there. I don't know how to explain that, but it was like it was empty. But with this weirdest look on his face, he said, "Everything's under control. We're working with the cartels now. It's all fine. The border is safe." It was so
That
bizarre.
was about
That wasn't this last year. That was a year and a half ago,
Yeah,
right? So
yeah.
that was September 11th of 2022,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
And even by then, I mean, at that point, you'd had close to 5 million illegals that have entered in. Now we know
Yes.
that number is approaching 10 million, may have surpassed 10 million, but we know a month ago, 9.8 million. You think about that New York is now really a border state. And of course, we know that it's been a border state, a northern border state, but really it's a southern border state at this point. When you have cops that are beaten up in Times Square and then get released, that is the face right now of this migrant crisis. And the CBP, Department of Homeland Security, have absolutely no control over it. And look, I think it's pretty obvious. I think Mayorkas has his oath of duty. I think he hasn't taken it seriously at all. And to me, this is pretty obvious from my standpoint that he should be impeached. I don't look at this as political at all.
I don't know that.
It's a matter of, will you enforce and execute the laws of the United States of America? And I think he has his constitutional duty. Sadly, he has not lived up to it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what do you think of the fact that it's in some ways, from a practical point of view, a useless impeachment, since the Senate will never
I was just going to say,
never vote to impeach him? I mean, between now and the time of the impeachment, he could shoot 3 people on Pennsylvania Avenue, and the Democratic Senate will not impeach him.
well, my thought on that is you always have to do what's right. And no one does believe the Senate will pass anything, but it's the right thing to do. This is clearly dereliction of duty, putting American lives at risk, our national security at risk, and we have to do what's right. Senate probably won't vote for this. It's the same situation with Biden. People say over and over again, "I don't want Kamala." But is it the right thing to do to look at the 25th Amendment with an incompetent, dementia-ridden president, never mind the corruption, pathological liar. If we have a special prosecutor telling us he can't even stand trial, then we should look at that as a nation and not worry about Kamala or anything else. We always should strive to do the right thing, is my opinion.
Yeah, and I also think it's an important vote that each senator should have to take and explain it to their state, explain it to their constituencies, and a debate, an argument that should be on the Senate floor. They should ultimately discuss this, and you should explain why either, yes, he should be removed from office, or no, he shouldn't be removed from office. And this is going to, I think, instruct the American people about a lot of the details of what's actually happened there. I mean, you mentioned the fentanyl crisis. You mentioned child trafficking. This is an opportunity for Republicans to present this on the floors of the Senate. It's an opportunity for Mayorkas to defend himself as well on the floors of the Senate. And the American people can see that, right?
Yeah.
Then it goes from being behind closed doors to actually right out there for the American people. And I really believe, I know a lot of people on the left, and there are probably even some Republicans that believe that the American people are not smart enough to handle the truth. But in terms of this, I believe the American people are more than smart enough. And I think transparency here is so important with regards to not just this border crisis, but so much of what Washington, D.C. is dealing with. I know we'll talk about NATO in a little bit. I know we'll talk about this New York 3 election. But when you think about how much goes on behind kind of this cloud of dust here in D.C. that nobody gets to see through, I think the world would be a lot better if most of those policy discussions we're having was out on the table for all Americans to see.
Yeah, I think that you're absolutely right. I think that if you are a United States congressman, you have a certain duty. You don't control the Senate. You don't control the White House. You don't control the courts. You have a duty. And I think you have to vote your conscience, particularly when it's as serious as this. I mean, this is not, I can't think of a cabinet secretary who has violated his oath of office as egregiously and lied about it as this guy. I don't think there's any risk that lots of cabinet secretaries can get impeached. I can't think of one like this. And in a way, as a member of Congress, it's not within your control what the Senate does.
Yeah.
It's in control how you vote. And their constituents have a right to have this vote. And I think you're right. The senators will have to go down as a matter of history. Some of those senators are not going to want to go back for re-election, having voted to keep Mayorkas there, with over 100,000 people dying of fentanyl, with human trafficking, the highest it's been, with 85,000 children missing ever.
Yeah.
I mean, this guy has gotten Americans killed. I know Biden is ultimately responsible, but he is too. I mean, he can quit anytime he wants. I mean, it's like saying, the guy who ran the concentration camp isn't responsible because he was running it for Hitler.
Yeah. And by the way, this is a direct connection to Democrats trying to ensure that they will get more Democratic voters for generations. And let me explain here, because I know on the left, you may have heard said, well, wait a second, they can't vote in federal elections. But if you look at some of our cities, including New York City, they have tried to institutionalize that non-citizens, non-New Yorkers can actually vote as long as they reside in New York City for 30 days. But they've gone even further than that. And let me explain. In New York State, what Kathy Hochul, and I know in other states they're trying to do this, a lot of the municipal elections are actually in off years. So the mayoral election happens in 2021, 2025. Presidential election happens in 2024. Obviously, the midterms are 22, 26. So odd years versus even years. There is a push in New York, actually might be a ballot initiative this year, to line up the municipal elections with the federal election. So the mayoral election, let's say, would be in 2024 with the presidential. So you tell me how complicated this is then going to be if you have non-citizens voting, but they get a different ballot than actually New York citizens. So when they talk about the fact that, well, they can't vote in federal elections, I've heard Jerry Nadler say this, I've heard other leftist pundits say this, this would actually just muddy the waters completely more and make what already is way too complicated in terms of voting even that much more complicated, at least in the state of New York. And I'm sure this is going on in other states. I'm sure if you look at what's going on in Chicago, Los Angeles right now, you will see a similar track on this. So when they talk about this not actually affecting federal elections, this will make it an absolute nightmare in some of these leftist blue cities.
Great.
And that's what they're aiming for, because they are losing the Hispanic vote, if not lost it already. And they're beginning to see tremendous erosion with the black vote. So they can foresee 10 years from now not having their captive enslaved vote. And that they can just, they can count on a 90% vote. Without that 90% vote, nobody's going to elect them to anything. If they hadn't had that vote, they would have lost almost all of the prior elections, including the last one with Trump. Obama never would have been elected. So they have to get some kind of I call it Pavlovian vote, where you just vote Democrat and you don't even ask who the candidate is.
Can I ask
That's
you
what
a
happens
question?
when it's 90-10.
With can President Biden do an executive order tomorrow that says, due to national security concerns, I close the border. Not one
100%.
person could. That's what I thought.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah.
If you can close down America over.
I'm sure some people take him to court.
Yeah,
like
but actually,
ACLU and whatever.
here's the reason. He's got right now. He has historic numbers of illegals in this country. There has never been a year in the history of America that this many people came across the border. 300 and
God, that was December.
300
some
300 million, 3 million plus. I mean, it's ridiculous. Three point something million. We've got about 12, 15 million in here illegally since he's become president. We've never had more overdoses of drugs. We've never had more missing children. And we've never had the FBI tell us that they can't keep track of the foreign agents that are in this country. Ray has testified twice to that extent. So he's got a nice basis on which to say we are in a present emergency.
Yeah. And you know what he could also do if he ultimately didn't want to take that action? He didn't have to sue the state of Texas when they were trying to enforce themselves, right? That could have been actually what you wanted to do, right? Say, you know what? They're taking this. You know what? Let's actually pull our lawsuit, or let's actually not file a lawsuit, right? So don't tell me that the Democrats are the ones that are out there caring about border security. You just had 3 weeks ago Biden, and it wasn't Biden, obviously, because we know he's an elderly old man, as they've said that. But the Biden administration that has gone out there, yeah, exactly. The Biden administration that's gone out there and they sued the state of Texas that actually was trying to secure their state.
As a woman, Dr. Maria, do you find President Biden like a sympathetic old man who just can't remember who he is? I mean, and that we should feel sorry for him, or do you find him to be a rotten, miserable liar all his life, a crook, a mean father and grandfather, and a guy who you almost never know if he's telling the truth ever? I mean, I've never seen a man lie as much as that. It seems like he has no conscience.
I like multiple choice questions, by the way. This is easy. This one's an easy one, but go ahead.
Isn't involved in politics at all.
Feel sorry for the lying bastard.
I can see why people would say, "Oh my God, I feel really bad. He's so grandfatherly looking." Yeah, poor. Why are the Republicans picking on him? But the fact is, I have been involved. Somewhat. I'm knowledgeable about political candidates, especially for the president of the United States. In 1988, I had firsthand review of President Biden, then candidate Biden, going for president. He was a senator, and he lied through his teeth in New Hampshire. He just doesn't like to be challenged. And somebody challenged him, and he starts saying, "Hey, pal, I have a higher IQ than you. I have this many degrees, and I was in the top of my class." All of it lies. So, of course, all the news agencies were running his plagiarisms in the past and all these problems. So I knew him as a crook and a liar. And then, of course, through the Ukrainian information that you had, now I know he was corrupt and sold his seat. So I
mean to his granddaughter
him differently.
There's also a meanness to him that is extraordinary. I mean, I had mafia guys do it nicer to their grandchildren than this guy. But in any event,
I'm going to make my answer. It's B, the latter. B, corrupt liar who has sold out our country. So B.
Yeah.
No, it was A or B, right? Is he a man? So I'm going to go with B. He's a liar, corrupt. Absolutely. Dr. Maria was much more elaborate than I am, but this is very, very clear. When you sell out our country for personal gain, then you're a traitor.
Yeah.
Yeah, no question about it.
Yep.
So NATO is all upset. President Trump, I don't know what you said. He said something like, if he becomes president again, he's going to make them pay what they owe. Shit. And then they said, well, if they don't pay, will you defend them? And he said, not if their bills aren't paid. How are you going to get here? How are you going to get your bills paid if you're going to defend them, whether they pay their bills or they don't pay their bills?
Can I start on this one? Because this one's
Yes,
obviously
sure.
something that's personal for me, right? I have family that's over in Lithuania. They literally actually border with Russia. And this is something that I've had the opportunity to really get to know many of the Lithuanian people. And
Who are fully paid, by the way.
They are fully paid. They've over 2.5%. Same thing with Latvia. Same thing with Estonia. And to me, I think what Trump is doing on this is I think it's very, very smart. I do wish the other day he would not have said that I would urge Russia to do whatever the heck they want.
Ooh.
That's the one thing that I wish he would not have said in all this.
Yeah.
However, hold on, let me just finish the throat because I understand what you're talking about. I do think what he's doing here ultimately does make NATO stronger. Think of it this way, and we're going to use equity, not the diversity, equity, inclusion equity, but actual equity on this. If as many countries, NATO countries if possible, has hit that 2% GDP spending on their defense, then you have as many of these European countries that are in this really bought into the agreement, right? They have skin in the game. And it's not just kind of empty words and saying, you know what, we're going to have the U.S. spend their hundreds of billions of dollars. I believe it's $860 billion, of which the next country, I believe, is France right now at about $65 billion. So you're talking about the U.S. has at least 11 or 12 times more of defense spending than even the next NATO country. But the more countries that actually put into this agreement that actually decide to ramp up their defense, and Trump understands, right? It's not just a matter of writing a check and bam, you're at 2%. You need to ramp up production for defense spending.
Yeah.
This takes years to do. This takes 2, 3, 4 years. So when they made this commitment in 2014, you can see right now that most of the countries really, they had no real plan to actually fulfill this agreement, because otherwise you would have 85, 90% of the countries at this point, which we're hitting the 10-year mark right now or next year, depending on how you look at it, they would be paid up with the rest ready to go. And they haven't been. And so that's why I think what Trump is doing for the most part, even though it's not the most articulate that he's been on this, and trust me, that gives me some personal angst on this. But I think it really does make a lot of sense in terms of making NATO stronger and also letting these countries have the ability to defend themselves. And that's so important with regards to NATO.
Well, I agree with what Andrew was saying, and he covered the financial part of it and also their responsibility to defend themselves and build up their arms and their armies and navies and everything else. I want to cover the human side of it. I've been wanting the UN the F out of my country for decades. I don't like what they stand for.
That's the UN, not NATO. Okay.
Right. I'm sorry. I'm talking about the UN.
Okay, well,
sorry.
for you. I mean,
Yep. Let me jump to NATO. Sorry about that, Rudy.
no,
I
why
have
did you say
you
that?
the brain today. I
I
have
wanted
the brain
one
all
of the
day
UN
today.
12 years.
Well, when you have the UN literally out there and slaughtering, which
That's
you
right.
have had UN contractors, the UN RWA,
Yep.
actually in there slaughtering Israelis
Yep.
on October 7th, you understand how you feel that way.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah. Sorry, that's why I was thinking.
actually, when the Israeli army goes in there, I know this sounds terrible, but those are some of the people some people working for Hamas work for the UN.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
cover 12.
That's why they were
UN 12.
on my brain. But saying about NATO,
2,000 employees of UNRWA are Palestinians. They only have
that's right.
2,300.
Some participated in October 7th. But just a brief word on
Thank you,
NATO.
man.
I'm not sure. I'm going to really sound like a libertarian here. I'm not sure if they're of any value to us anymore. I just don't know. I'll leave it at that.
I disagree with that. I really, really
Or
do disagree.
UN.
I think NATO really has a lot of value to U.S. interest. I mean, you don't want the world devolving all over the place here. I mean, it really, really would give, I think, tyrants and dictators exactly what they want. And I think for what could be a limited amount where American taxpayers would not be on the hook for as much as they were 6-8 years ago, you'll have a lot more national stability than you would have without it. The UN and NATO, they are very, very different in terms of what they urge to accomplish. And I'm telling you, you would have hundreds of millions of, let's say, American people with the same American interests that would be put in harm's way if NATO would also go out. So I think you would lose a lot of allies, both because of military conflict and also that would look the other way because of our involvement in things like Iraq, Afghanistan, how NATO was involved in that. Whatever we think about those things, to me, NATO is extremely important to be a part of. I do think Trump's negotiation, though, here, I think for the most part, it does strengthen it. And it also does put the American taxpayer less on the hook for having to flip as much of this as we have to. But we don't want dictators and tyrants running crazy all over the world. And that's one of the things I think that NATO is able to prevent.
We'll take a short break and we'll be right back.
And we're actually going to start off today with our friend Mike Lindell and MyPillow. So while we have everyone here on set, we want to take a moment. We'll put the graphic up on the screen. With Valentine's Day tomorrow, no better time than now to make a purchase with our friend Mike Lindell and MyPillow. Look at those towels. Look at that. And be sure to use the promo code Rudy when purchasing your product. Oh, you're saving big time. And not only that, you're supporting everything the mayor is doing here, and you're doing a loved one a big favor by getting them what are great products. And Mayor, on what are your favorite products? Maybe we can go through the three of
all those towels I love, but I'd go for the red ones right now because it's Valentine's Day. I'd balance it. You know what I would do? Come on, guys. Let's get a set of red, white, and blues, huh?
Oh, wow.
From Mike. Red, white, and blues.
A decorative pillow that looks like the American flag. So I don't know if they have
the towels, red, white, and blue towels. You can lay them out right next to each other. And you can remind yourself all the time. What else?
Yeah, another really good product are their sheets. And I have them on all of the beds, and they're very comfortable. And I wash things like repeatedly. Use something once and I wash it. I'm like a crazy person. These sheets hold up.
You like butt?
Well, let's hear from another great sponsor on top of
Don't forget the slippers.
Oh, yes.
Slippers.
And it's not too late. And get those slippers now, even if they come a few days late.
Get red ones.
That's almost better, right? You get the slippers now at the anticipation, right? You get a few extra days post Valentine's Day, and all of a sudden you get these great.
He needs help too. This is not just an ordinary.
No, American-made products, American employees.
Help right now.
And Mike Lindell is a friend to you and I as he fought for election integrity, using his own money.
You're going to help him a lot by doing it right. And he needs it now. So this is the time to do it. And that's why we pushed it first and pushing it really, really hard. We really ask you to reach in and buy some of these products, get the nice discount. And, all right, you are helping him a great deal, but you also are getting a nice product. He's not taking anything from it. And then he's putting a lot of that money that he has left back into making sure we save our country this November.
American made too, right?
Yeah.
It's all American made.
Yeah.
Yep.
All in Minnesota, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yeah. So don't miss out. Make sure you go to mypillow.com and use that promo code Rudy. And now let's hear from another one of our great sponsors.
Device is something that you can plug into your television. And now you can use your television as a social television type experience. So in the Portal universe, you can watch your favorite content creators' videos, live streams, music. We also have TV subscriptions as well.
TV subscriptions.
You can also
regular channels, all the sports.
Right. You can actually cut your cable from your cable subscription and get QUX TV on our QX TV boxes. And you can pay half the price that you're currently paying for your cable television subscription. And you can get all the best premium TV channels and more. I mean, it's really, there's so much on there, Rudy. I mean, you've seen it.
No. I've seen it and I use it, and it's good. I mean, it's just exactly the same except for half the price. Plus, nobody is finding out what I'm watching, and that's not being reported to anybody.
Right. So you have absolute privacy using this device, which you don't have on other devices out there currently on the market.
This is absolutely great. QUX.TV is how you can find out about it. QUX.TV.
Use promo code RUDY to receive $30 off.
And we're back. Thanks for joining us. A very busy Tuesday night, special election day. Always an exciting day when there's an election to be had in New York's 3rd Congressional District. Andrew, Mayor, are you guys hearing anything? You're so plugged in. We have a worldwide audience. What can you tell people about New York's 3rd Congressional District and kind of what to watch for here as the polls close?
The polls close at 9. And really, assuming no shenanigans, I hope there are none. If it's a normal New York election, if it's a pretty good win, somebody wins this by 3-4% or better, you're going to get a quick result. It'll all be over by 10:30, at the latest 11. If it goes down to the wire, it could take forever, like any other one, because you are going to have. I doubt there are a large number of absentee ballots here or paper ballots, but there will be some. There was some early voting, but that's already been counted.
Mm-hmm. And by the way, that's going to be a real key. I know for our New York watchers who are out there reviewing, obviously there's been weather today. There's been a snowstorm in New York. And so depending on who voted early, how many Republicans were able to get their in-person votes in early, that could end up being the difference between, in a low turnout, tight race where I think it's a D+2 that was last won by, as we know, Santos by 7 points around. That could be the difference between Mazi or Swazi potentially. So we'll see. I've been trying to get a feel for this thing. I've been asking my friends in New York 3 where this thing stands. If you see me kind of looking down, it's kind of at my phone trying to get feedback on all this. Just that the turnout is low as expected. I'm not sure what that means in terms of election day versus early voting. Again, we don't know what this means in terms of what GOP ended up getting their vote out early. I know people were expecting this. So even though you and I believe in voting in person in election day, I know you've talked about this and we've talked about this. You've got to kind of play with the rules that are on the board right now. If we're going to win elections again.
I mean, I sort of changed my mind. I think you should vote on day one, early voting.
Yeah. In case you have a situation like this, where you have the snowstorm, you might not be able to get out for some reason.
Get the vote in, get it in. God forbid something happens. Right. Get the vote in. I think it's hard to predict too, because small election, small turnout. The Democrat Party has the machine to produce a vote. On the other hand, she's got the enthusiasm in the race. The issues are going her way.
Yeah, the national issues definitely.
Particularly, this is a district very affected by the border.
Yeah.
And the way it particularly has reverberated in New York, because Adams has magnified all of the problems of Biden by 10 times.
Yeah.
So who knows who the enthusiastic ones are? Are the enthusiastic ones the ones that are being brought out by the machine because you can count on them, their jobs count on it? Or is it the ones that are coming out on emotion, like we got to get rid of this Democratic Congress, we've got to stop this thing? And she has done a good job, even though outspent. It is clear who's gonna shut down immigration and who's responsible for it. She's done a good job of painting Swazi as having been in favor of sanctuary city, of having been in favor of and actually throwing the ICE agents out of his town.
Mhm.
So on that one, she has him. He's come back with abortion.
Yeah.
And confused things with abortion. So it's going to be fascinating to see what happens. I wonder how much national implications there are in it. Probably they're going to say a lot, and I'm going to say almost none.
Yeah, right now you've got, just in terms of the way the House sits now, it's 219 to 212, Republicans with 219, Democrats with 212. There are 4 vacancies. So this would be the difference between having an 8-person difference versus a 6-person
So,
difference.
actually, I should amend that.
Yeah.
I didn't mean a big difference in terms of the House. Big difference in terms of the House. I mean in terms of the presidential race.
Oh, in terms of presidential.
I think this is.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with you
This
there.
is its own district. This is an area that if Trump were to win New York, we wouldn't even have an election.
Yeah.
I mean, it would be.
It would.
It'd be over. Even CNN would have to call it for him.
Yeah, it would be a surprise to say the least. I do think this is a district that he's going to do better than expected, because I think this is a district where a lot of people are fed up by these national issues, and maybe they didn't necessarily like some of the tweets that President Trump was sending out when he was president. But I think they're looking and they're saying, wait a second, we now have a border crisis, which has turned into a humanitarian crisis here. We have inflation, which has been through the roof, by the way, still is, as we've seen the numbers today, still is at 3.5% to 4%, which is double what it was the last, really all 4 years under Trump. All 4 years under Trump was between 1.9 to 2.1% inflation. And now you've had as much as 9% under Biden, still close to 4% right now. So your household items are so much more. Shrinkflation, as Biden likes to talk about. That's an issue, I guess, for you too as well there to just add on top of it. And here's another thing to remember about Swazi. New York, at some point this year, we'll end up seeing congestion pricing for New Yorkers that want to travel in, or anybody who wants to travel in to New York below 60th Street. That is going to increase the cost of groceries. It's going to increase your daily commute. By the way, Tom Swazi was one of the early backers of congestion pricing. So look,
he represents suburbanites.
He is.
Who come into the city and pay for this. He's got to be a little out of his mind.
And here's the thing about Swazi too. And I'm going to get to Mazi in a little bit, because you know more than anybody, I'm not a Mazi fan. I'm really, really not. And as this election has gone on, I have more questions about Mazi than I did even at the very beginning of this. But let's be completely honest with everybody about here. Swazi voted 100% of the time with Joe Biden. Also, he voted 93% of the time. That's right, 93% of the time with Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. That's AOC and the squad.
Soviet vote.
He's very much like Biden, where Biden likes to say, I'm a problem solver. I'm somebody who's in the middle. I'm going to bring the divide. And he ends up voting with the left every single time, or almost every single time. So that's what you have in Tom Swazi.
You're describing a two-faced individual.
I am. I am. Shall we get to Mazi?
How about we move on to a few other subjects, and when we get closer to the results, we'll get to Mazi.
Okay. Because I'm not a big fan of Mazi. I want to be very clear either.
Because
I don't want to just say, I don't like it.
Because I'm not talking.
I have a bad feeling in my stomach about it, to be honest.
Oh,
I do. I feel like there will be time if she is elected. Yeah, I know. I do feel like there are some times.
I got a good feeling about her one vote that I care about. I only care about one vote.
Well, I'll tell you what, on lawfare, she might not be a good vote. And that to me. So the border may be the most important issue. Border may be the number one most important issue. But I really think a close second is what's going on in our justice system here in America. And you are a perfect example of that.
Then we can get rid of it.
So let's
get the vote on leadership right now. That's what we need. So I think we have to talk just a little bit about the fact that this migrant invasion is totally different than any migrant crisis we've had in the past. I describe this as the Marielito boat lift on steroids.
Mm-hmm.
Marielito boat lift took place in just one place, Florida. It was one country, Cuba, that unloaded not only good people on us, they did 100,000 good people who have become wonderful Americans, but 25,000 people out of insane asylums and prisons were emptied into the United States.
Mhm.
So now this is happening in a multitude of countries are doing this. Venezuela is following it to a T, and we must have a dozen countries doing the same thing.
Yeah.
And now we're seeing the effects of crime. New York has a migrant crime wave.
Mhm.
There's one very large gang from Venezuela, the biggest gang in Venezuela that now is ensconced in New York. They're stealing everything that they hands on, in particular jewelry and phones, sending it back. It's hundreds of $millions of business, and they're ensconced deeply in New York. I imagine they are elsewhere. It's just shown up in New York quickly.
Yeah.
So this guy has brought in, when they say he's brought in 8-10 million people, please don't think of the old illegal immigrants. This is a disproportionate number of career criminals, violent people, and if Director Ray is correct, terrorists.
Yeah, I think, and very interesting to see one of the reports. And again, take it for what it's worth. It is the intelligence agencies, and they definitely have their political agendas as well. But I do think this was pretty interesting to see that potentially some of these Venezuelan gangs may be working with MS-13 on some of this stuff. So if you want to talk about an issue that President Trump really worked to nip in the bud, which was MS-13, now you have them being refortified by some of these illegal migrants that have come in and these Venezuelan gangs that have come in. That's a very, very scary scenario for Americans.
Well, the group that beat up the police officers, well, I'm sure when I say that, almost all of you are aware of what I'm saying. About a week ago, a group of Venezuelan illegal migrants, all of whom have come here under Biden, I call them Biden illegals, members of this gang, of this vicious gang, beat up, they say 8, it was more like about 14, beat up on 2 cops, kicking him in the head, kicking him in the shins, kicking him in the side, throwing things at them, showing complete and utter disregard for our police officers. Then, of course, we demonstrated the stupidity of what we've become by letting them out and not holding them on bail. And they all disappeared. They're somewhere in the wind now. And our idiot district attorney, appointed by Soros's millions and millions of dollars, because New York is a thoroughly corrupt city. Would you please understand that from probably its best mayor in a long time? And certainly its most knowledgeable mayor, without any question.
New York's greatest mayor.
In fact,
considering the challenge
for the longest time, I was the only mayor born in New York City. So I swear to God, I know New York City better than anyone.
Let's wait a second. Let's put it in perspective. New York has had 4 years in the history of the city with 2,000 murders a year. Those years were 1990 to 1993, the 4 years before you were mayor. Within 5 short years, New York, for 20 years in a row, was one of the safest large cities, not just in the country, but in the world. So when you talk about the greatest mayor in recent memory, this is the greatest mayor. I think the most important individual ever since Hudson ended up coming down that river to the west of Manhattan Island. That's sitting to my right over here.
On crime, I think I probably am. But in any event, the reality is, what I'm trying to tell you is this is very different. This can't be compared. I'm not saying that what we went through in the 60s and the 70s and the 80s and the 2,000 murders a year in many ways in some ways was worse. This, in some ways, is worse. And this is a foreign invasion. Don't minimize it. Don't listen to the silly, dumb, and maybe ideologically Marxist liberals who tell you these are all good people. Don't listen to those who tell you they're all bad people either. The tragedy of it is that they're following the Castro script, but en masse. Castro, when Jimmy Carter said, "Send me everybody from Cuba," Castro said, "Okay, dope. You'll get everybody from Cuba. You'll get the 100,000 people reuniting with their families. They came in, fabulous people. But here's 30,000 from prisons and from and from
Insane
institutions
asylums,
for the
right.
permanently insane, people who kill you for fun, people who rip hands of other people off if they get near them. You can't imagine what we had to do with them in the Atlanta penitentiary. I was put in charge of that by Ronald Reagan. I know it intimately. I know exactly what it was all about, and I know exactly how we stopped it. And we stopped it. Ronald Reagan stopped it in less than a year. And that's what it'll take Donald Trump to stop it. If we reelect Biden, it'll magnify, it'll get worse. And we'll have a successful invasion of the United States. This is a foreign invasion going on. We got enough problems with our domestic crime. We don't need these Venezuelans beating the hell out of our cops.
I couldn't agree anymore. And I think considering your knowledge of the Justice Department, knowledge of what happened with the Mariella boat lift, and how that actually affected Florida, affected Arkansas, affected Atlanta, as you said it. You have an intimate knowledge in terms of what this actually means.
This is much
for present day, and then, like you said, much bigger.
This is
So,
Marietta.
I know we got to go
on
to break here. Mariella boat lift. How many hundreds of thousands of people about were you talking about there?
It was between the Marielitos and the Haitians.
Right.
It was about 200,000-300,000 people.
Okay, so now you're looking at 50 times that, about 50 times what that is. So that gives you the perspective on it.
Yeah.
Okay, well, take us to break, America's Mayor.
Time for break. Time for break. Foundation delivers on its promise to do good and never forget the sacrifices America's greatest heroes have made for us. Heroes who risked their lives to keep our communities and our country safe. Heroes like United States Marine Corps Captain and Pilot John Jeremy Sachs. Captain Sachs sustained fatal injuries when his military aircraft crashed during training, killing him and 5 other service members. He's remembered by loved ones as courageous, brilliant, and devoted to his career, family, and friends. John is survived by his wife, Amber, who gave birth to their second daughter 3 months after his death. Tunnel to Towers paid the mortgage on the family home for Amber and their 2 daughters. The foundation has helped over 1,000 military and first responder families navigate the worst of times by removing the burden of a mortgage payment. Our nation's heroes and their families need your help now more than ever. Donate $11 a month to Tunnel to Towers at T2T.org. T2T.org. That's T, the number 2T.org. T2T.org. Please donate now.
Okay, I ran in the other
Foundation.
Right here.
The greatest organization in America.
T2T.org right here. You know what I love about this ad in particular, too? We've got the NYPD, FDNY, and PAPD, who obviously lost 343 brave firefighters, 23 police officers, 37 Port Authority police officers. And you got on the other side, you've got every single one of the service organizations, including the military organization, including the Space Force, which Trump ended up putting in there. So anyway, Tunnel to Towers, one of the best here. That wasn't planned even, was it?
No.
Okay, well, there you go.
T.org, $11 a month. And then you'll get opportunities to get all of that at a discount. You should see the stuff they have. Great shirts, great. If you play golf like
My hair looks crazy. I might have to.
If you put it on, if you
My hair
play
looks a
golf
little wild
like,
out there.
If you play golf like Andrew, you can wear all different hats at different times, and they're cool hats. So I'm taking my balance of nature, my fruits, my vegetables. I had dinner a little while ago. I had a few vegetables, but not enough. I took 2 this morning. I got tired this morning. As soon as I took them, 3 minutes later, I was jumping around like a madman, chasing your daughter.
That's true. Grace likes to hop around like a bunny right now because she's 2, and that's what 2-year-olds do. And you like to hop around like a bunny as well. By the way, Biden wouldn't be able to hop behind a mic, and you were able to hop all over the house. I don't know if it's because of your balance of nature or what it was, but you were hopping everywhere. So
it's because you and your wonderful wife, who is not my daughter-in-law. I always say she's just like my daughter Caroline, and have given us the most unbelievable granddaughter.
She's
tell
awesome.
you, Grace. Oh,
There is, and it gives you such a perspective on life when you just
And it
get to
makes you-
interact with your child and just see all the things that she's learning on a daily basis, and it makes you want to fight for our country even more because
Doesn't it?
you realize
yeah.
everything that we're going through and just how evil some of this stuff really is.
100%.
I mean, when you talk about, let's just say gender hormone blockers to 6, 7, 8-year-olds. I mean, remember, you can't vote until you're 18. You can't drive a car, rent a car till you're 25 years old. And they're saying at 6, 7 years old that parents legally in some states, like New York, can't actually know about their children actually being pushed to take these
How could that?
hormone blockers. It's toxic, it's child abuse, and it's why we need to keep on fighting against these evil forces here that sadly are pushing this on our kids.
We're going to have a permanent psychiatrist on this show. I got to get advice here. Every morning I wake up, the first thing I find out about, I don't know how it is. Maybe I look at, is the thing that went wrong that day. And every day is a new, absolutely crazy. Imagine the first time I woke up and I saw that a justice for the Supreme Court was asked, can you define a woman? She said, no. I can't tell you what a woman is. I mean, that's like a shock.
Yeah.
Or someone is testifying that there are 57 genders.
It's up to 57 now. I lost
I don't
count in
know.
the
I may be
30s somewhere, but no, you might be right. I don't know.
So what I try to do is I do the two I know, and then I do every permutation and combination I can come up with. And I get to about 5 or 6. So that drives me nuts. Now, here's another one I want to tell you about. Anytime one of these situations with a transgender person ends up in violence, it's suppressed. And there was an article in the New Epic Times about 3 weeks ago that there is a concern that there is a substantial amount of violence generated from all of the unbelievable emotions that are being brought up by this craziness. In other words, there's more violence in that community than we're talking about. So we have the attack on the church in Houston, Texas on Sunday. The person who did it has been registered as having 2 different sexes. I don't know. I think that's transgender. I think people were seriously wounded. She had some Palestinian thing with her too, a pro-Palestine thing.
Mm-hmm.
So this is one of the most famous churches in America. The Reverend
Joel Osteen
is one of the most famous, and to some extent at one point controversial. Not to me. I love Joel Osteen, and I think he's completely legitimate and a wonderful guy. But some people have their own views of him. But in any event, you can't say this guy isn't newsworthy. This isn't like it happened in Father Alvarez's little church, in Ozone Park, and nobody ever heard of it.
And even if it was so, that should be newsworthy. The fact you would
Mayor,
a mega church,
Mayor, you've probably been to this church.
I've spoken there.
Well, you know where it is.
It's in Houston.
It's Houston, right?
But you know what building it's taking up? It's where the Houston Rockets used to play.
Oh, was it? Yeah, I know that.
I
So
did know that
before you lived there.
Now that you told me that, they told me that the moment I walked in. No, I don't mean that it should get the same attention no matter where.
Yeah.
Just the nature of news, something like that happening about a place that has gotten so much publicity.
Mm-hmm.
It would now let's change it for a minute. White guy walks in there, typical Southern white guy, and he's Ku Klux Klan, and he's pro-Israel, and he feels that and of course this wouldn't be true, but he feels that Joel Osteen's crowd is not pro-Israel enough, and he wipes out a couple of them.
Well, that's what it would be, right? Obviously, typical Southern white guy is not KKK, but let's say they were pro-Israel or something like that. The media would be obviously painting it that way, and it would be a story for weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks.
And Garland to go out
just like Charlottesville was a story for weeks and weeks and months and months and months.
White people.
So, and they distorted Trump's word with regards to that as well.
Garland would send out the FBI stormtroopers and see if he could pick up some more January 6th people.
Yeah.
He would now move out to Virginia if you were in Virginia with the thought of coming in to Washington on the 6th, you'd be arrested for interfering in the congressional hearings, and you'd go to jail before Judge, what's my judge's name? The one who asked that the sentences be high. The one who thought the sentences weren't enough. And she told the judges, Beryl Howell.
Okay, how can we forget?
So
then they'd move to Maryland. If you're in Maryland, they'll take you from Maryland.
So you started talking a little bit about the Justice Department here and how corrupt, look, they've been over the last few years. Whenever we can, I'd love to get back to this New York 3 race because it's one of the biggest concerns that I have about our Republican candidate here.
Tell us your concern about Pilip. Yeah, well, we first should explain that she's been a Republican, Democrat, and Republican.
Well, she's still a Democrat. She still is a registered Democrat at this point.
No, that's right. That's right. She
still is a registered Democrat. Still,
she was a Republican and became a Democrat, remained a Democrat, but is running as a Republican.
Right. So a couple issues I have here. Right. One, obviously, that she still is a Democrat. She got Wilson Pagula in, which means basically the Republican Party and conservative parties can accept somebody in the state of New York who is a Democrat to run on their line. Okay, I had my concerns with that, but even looking beyond that specifically, the biggest issue that I've had on this is how she's had different answers every single time she's been asked about whether or not she would support President Trump if he was convicted of a crime immediately. And look, I understand that her consultants and the people in New York 3 that are working for her telling her, don't bring up Trump. Their belief is if you don't bring up Trump, then it's going to help us in the election because Trump can only hurt us. Okay, I have my issues with that as well. But let's even put that aside for a second. The fact that you would not go and look and say, wait a second, who are the people that are conducting these investigations? Who are indicting President Trump on these 91 counts? Alvin Bragg, Jack Smith, Letitia James is involved in this, and Fani Willis. Now, all you need to do and say is, I am not going to comply with a political investigation, with a corrupt political investigation, period. And that's ultimately her answer. That's what it should have been on this every single time. And she's given a different answer. Today was the closest that she's gotten that I heard earlier on WABC radio when she actually gave an answer. And it was kind of a 2-minute answer. And she said, well, because they're political, I won't. It's just tough for me to buy it, considering that for the last month and a half, she's given a different answer on lawfare. And when I look at the people, and it's not just President Trump on this, right? It's Rudy Giuliani. It's anybody who's gone out there and expressed concerns, let's say, with the 2020 election. It's people who are pro-life, who the Justice Department is going after. It's parents at school board meetings who are going out there and saying, my daughter was sexually assaulted and you're not going to do anything about it. And the Justice Department has the gall to go on out and call them domestic terrorists. And I'm sorry, if somebody's not going to go out there and is running for Congress and doesn't realize that is one of the preeminent issues that's facing, it's really like a warfare, an internal warfare that we're dealing with here in the country, then I just don't think you're ready to represent us, to be perfectly honest. So here's the thing. I guess that she's going to be a little better than Suozzi if she ends up getting in, but we're going to have to do a whole lot of work to make sure that her last answer with regards to looking at the Justice Department is actually the way that she legislates and she votes, because I have a very real feeling that that's an answer that she's giving on election day to try to get conservatives to come home. And that's a real concern that I have. And the reason why I bring that up is because I'd like to be honest with your audience on this, as you always are. But, you know, I believe that the issues that we're facing in our country, it's much more than Republican and Democrat. It's good versus evil. And I want to make sure that we're doing everything we can to make sure that good can prevail, because damn, evil seem to be winning right now. And I effing hate it. Excuse my language. I effing hate it. Sorry.
No, there's no question you shouldn't. It is the biggest issue that we face. And I have the same concern that you have, but on the factor of throwing away the leadership, or getting close to throwing away the leadership, or getting it and finding out maybe your concerns are wrong. Maybe
hope so.
She's going to be okay. Some of
Hope
it,
so.
it's a complex issue. I don't know if she completely understood the whole complexity of it. A lot of people react. A lot of people who believe that the indictments are fraudulent say they might vote against him if he's convicted. But that doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
If you believe the indictments are fraudulent, then he should be acquitted.
Yeah.
Because you believe he's an innocent man. Innocent men should be acquitted. And when innocent men are convicted, then we have a real problem in our justice system that we have to stand up to and we have to fix. We can't be afraid to do that. So if they gain dishonest convictions, which is what they would be, and those things stand, it'd be even worse because you'll be next, like I was next, and there are people after me. So a Republican, I think we have a right to expect, will understand that and will fight for that. Because if a Republican won't, we're finished as a country. So I think that's where Andrew is saying he's very worried that she doesn't have the fire in the belly or the understanding, or maybe he'll go the other way. And I'm just hoping that she's on the right side. She'll give us the right leadership, and she'll be with the people who can explain it to her in a way that she'll understand it, because she sounds like a smart person. At the same time, she's not the most knowledgeable about America. Let's face it. She's only been here a short period of time. That would ordinarily be a reason you wouldn't vote for her. But in this period of time, we're almost better with somebody new than with a good old-fashioned communist.
Look, I hear what you're saying here. I do. And I guess my support for Mazi is about as enthusiastic as her support is for those people that are facing lawfare investigations right now. That's the best way to put it.
Well, hopefully her,
you know what?
Hopefully her enthusiasm for them will go up. And
I hope
your
so too.
enthusiasm for her.
That's a good way. They're very congruent in all this. So, I guess the best message that I can have right now, if Mazi Pilip is the next representative from New York 3, Mazi, make me, I would love to be wrong on this one. Please. I would love to sit here in a couple of weeks or a couple of months and say, you know what? I was glad I was wrong on Mazi Pilip. I hope, and you're right. Look, here's the thing. With regards to 75, 80% of the votes, she's going to be a vote for Johnson. Whereas Swazi, 90, 95% of the time, is going to be a vote against Johnson. So there's no doubt about that. And with the border, she's going to be a better vote. The argument that I've heard from some conservatives, not all, but some conservatives in Nassau County has said, hey, look, we would be willing to sacrifice this seat for 11 months. It's not the majority. There still will be a 7 or 8 seat majority in the 7 or 8 person majority in the House once you have these specials all wrapped up, the McCarthy seat and all that stuff. And so we'd rather sacrifice this and have a real conservative come and run in here just a few short months. So I understand that argument. Look, Mazi, you get this. I hope that I am wrong, and I hope that you're out there and you're fighting for the Americans that are fighting to really bring truth and justice every single day to you. Americans like Rudy Giuliani, Americans like Donald Trump, and Americans that had the guts to go and stand up and to speak real truth to power when they knew the sacrifice would be more than most Americans could bear. So, Mazi, make those people proud.
Well, I think the polls probably
It goes in 5 seconds.
Are
5 seconds. Look at this. That was like a basketball game. Was it 5.2 seconds or something like that? Can we get like the
shot
round down? That's my Ted's one of the best right there. We're working the mic there.
Zeros.
I like it.
The bid, but if you're in line, you get to vote.
Think New York elections are that accurate? Just think of Michigan elections.
So, well, serious question now. In your
No better than Michigan elections.
no, but Detroit, I'll take you to Detroit.
I felt very much at home with all those dirty elections that I was involved in.
So the polls are now.
Having never seen a clean one here,
Historically speaking, when do you start seeing results in New York? When the Democrat takes the lead, or
yeah, exactly.
In a few minutes, you're
Good
going
point.
will they start coming in? So we're watching now. We'll see
in a few
for a couple of minutes here.
You'll
Yeah.
see little silly, numbers like the first 1% or something like
Yeah.
that.
what'll be interesting to see is when they actually dump the mail-ins. Not the mail-ins, the early and the mail-ins. Yes, both of those. But when they dump the early and the mail-ins, because then you'll get a real feel for, I think, first off, how many Republicans came out early, which could be a real factor today, considering the weather up in New York. It is kind of crazy, though. You mentioned on your radio show today at 3:00 how if Washington could not let the idea die with Valley Forge in the snow, that that we would be concerned with going out there in some snow to go out and vote.
Because the Republicans that really feel this is a patriotic election.
Yeah.
So let's act like patriots. Just a little sacrifice to go out in the snow. My gosh.
Yeah, exactly.
Go out in the snow. If you actually feel like you can't go out in the snow to vote, why don't you become a Democrat? They hate America anyway.
Well, I think everybody watching this show would walk through miles in the snow to go and vote.
People
So
walk through the snow to vote.
yeah, exactly.
We also know, but we also know that we have a real problem in the Republican Party because we're going to lose by a big number. There's no chance that's going to change. The black vote could change, the Hispanic vote could change, but the dead vote will be straight Democrat. Always is.
Oh,
We have never figured out how to campaign in cemeteries. Have never been good at it. Democrats are unbelievable. I have to give it to them. They're unbelievable with cemeteries. They get large.
we really don't do well in the dead vote.
Breaking news:
Right, let's see.
the first numbers have come in with just 6% of the vote in.
That's a lot.
Tom Suozzi leads Pilip 7,000 votes, 7,111 votes to 3,694 votes.
That may be the early votes, though. That might be actually some of those early votes.
So
if
that's
you
just
think about it, that
6%
just
of the
came in
vote.
now.
And this is Associated Press. So Tom Suozzi 65%, Tamazi Pilip's 34% with just 10,000 votes counted.
I mean, you know better than me. I would expect those votes to be the early votes.
Yeah, those are not from voting machines today.
Yeah.
It's a little too early. It's only 3 minutes.
Yeah. So
Think of what has to happen. They got to close the machine, right? They have got to square up the vote in that precinct, and both sides have to sign off on it.
Ted, those numbers
So
were
that's going to take, in a nice smooth district, the number isn't going to start coming in for 15 minutes.
so
Most districts a half hour, and any district that has a problem, like they have to go back and reconcile something,
right.
they're going to take 45 minutes. And I'm not talking about cheating now. I'm talking about the normal things that go wrong with voting. I mean, anytime you start counting, things go wrong.
So
Legitimately.
Ted, just to go over those numbers again, you're looking about 7,000 votes for Suozzi. Is that what the number that you said?
That's right.
7,000 votes, 3.5 thousand votes for Mozzie, 3,500 votes for Mozzie. So if we're looking, and that's 6% of the vote in, then you're talking about 180 to 190,000 votes is going to be your denominator. So that means you're looking at about a 90,000 votes, 95,000 votes in order to win this thing that the candidate is actually looking to get to here. Now, to me, this has been one of the most interesting and sadly disgusting things with elections. That denominator changes throughout the night. You know, you should know how many people have voted by the time polls close at 9 o'clock, right? You should know ultimately that there were 185,200 people. What we saw in Michigan, Wisconsin, Georgia in 2020 is that denominator changed even late throughout the night. So right now, everybody, all New Yorkers, whether or not you wanted Mozzie, Suozzi, whoever it is, we should all know exactly how many voters voted. It's like when you used to take the tests, right? At the very end, they say, put down your pens. You should know exactly how many people submitted that vote at 9:01 on election day. So that's one of the things that I like to look at. Does that denominator change? And if it changes, who ends up benefiting from the denominator changing, right? This ultimately becomes a math equation now. If you continue to change the denominator here, then you give one side or the other a better chance to reach that math equation, which should be settled and it should be objective, but we've seen it's actually become subjective in elections.
So no question about it. I mean, and they do that in a close election so they can feed in more phony votes.
Right.
But right now they're not at that stage yet.
So the portion of votes that came from Queens. So on the far western portion of District 3, so that's the city of New York. So you'd expect that portion of the vote to come in heavy for the Democrats.
Yes.
And this is the early vote. This is the early vote for Queens.
Nassau will
Yeah.
be more
This is
Republican
Queens,
than
yeah.
Queens.
It matters where in Queens. You know, the one part that will be Republican is that Whitestone area where you have the Councilwoman Vicky Palladino. So as long as it's not that area, which I expect Mozzie to win that area. I know she's been out there supporting Mozzie, and she's had her at the club. You actually had pro-Palestinian protesters that actually came in and interrupted one of her speeches there about a month ago. So I would expect Swazi to carry Queens. I would expect it to be, considering where that district is, somewhat close, because I think Whitestone will come out. But I expect Swazi to carry that Queens portion by, let's say, somewhere between 5 to 10%. That'd be my guess. If Mozzie is going to actually win this, then Swazi can win Queens, but he can't win it going away. Let's put it that way. And remember, that Queens part, it's only about 8 to 10% of the district. So you're talking about a tenth of the district. The thing that's so interesting, and one of the reasons why this race is so tough to call in any kind of way, is because this is only the second time that there's actually been this district, right? This is a new district that was fought over through redistricting in New York. Originally, when the Democrats had a gerrymander, which got struck down, this district technically was going to go from the state border of Connecticut, and it was going to go all the way out to Suffolk County. So it was going to be like a half moon around the Long Island Sound. And the only reason it was going to be like that was because Democrats actually wanted the gerrymander, and they were trying to figure out how can we get the neighborhoods that are going to be best for us there. It made no sense. And that's how the judge ended up drawing this specific district.
Can I put this on our, is there any way that I can take this from my iPad and show it to the people? I can show them the district.
I'll bring up a map here. I can bring up a map. What website are you on?
I'm on,
I can screen share.
let's see.
I'll bring up a map of the district. So the
Just
vote.
put down map of 3rd Congressional District. I'm going to try to find the best one that makes it the clearest here.
So we're following this live with just 6% of the vote in. A few hundred more votes came in, and Pilip has cut into Swazi's lead by almost a full percentage point. But again, just 6%.
Yeah, it'll change.
Reporting. Swazi with 7,586 votes to Pilip's 4,065. So that's 65% to 34.9%. Again, with just 6% of the vote reporting. And again, we expect those are likely early votes from Queens.
Yeah,
that's correct.
We're both looking here. We're trying to get whatever information we possibly can. I've been trying to talk to my friends in the district here. It's, you know what? I wish I could tell you that we're going one way or another, but this could end up being a very long night, actually, to be honest. Legitimately, if you're talking about a real election, I'm thinking about to talk about a personal story here on all this. I remember when you became mayor in 1993. And I remember because at the time,
I can't remember.
Well, wait a second. It wasn't Joe Biden who became mayor. It was Rudy Giuliani. He was America's mayor. But I remember that I don't
remember when you were born.
Well, anyway, I remember specifically, I don't think the race was called until about 1:30 in the morning, if I'm not mistaken. It was pretty early because, again, when you're talking about these races that come down to 2-3%, you do need to actually legitimately count all these votes. What happens is when the votes stop, right? When you stop counting, when it goes till the next day, you had a very, very close race, but they were able to actually determine that there was a winner very early that next morning at 1 a.m., 1:30 in the morning.
So we have it up here. We're using, look, I hate to say it, the New York Times does have very good, at least maps and graphics. And they're actually getting their information, I believe, from the Associated Press. So to the degree that we can trust it, they do get this information.
So tell me where to get that one. I just printed one out for us.
Great.
So what do I get yours?
Go ahead and type in.
Yeah.
New York Times special election, and they'll go ahead and.
I always hate
They'll have it up there for you. And so again, with
York
just
Times.
6% reporting,
It is sad that you couldn't have Fox News or somebody actually come out and with decent election results, right? I mean,
the Times
is
has
that something that we can have here? I've got
kept a secret.
I decided.
What do I do? What do I hit there now?
Do you see it? Do you see where it comes up there?
I'll get you right here. I did it with Associate Press,
Associated
and it
Press?
does actually put you right to the New York Times. Funny enough. So
Look, and it's been
Associate
for quite some time. I've used that
Press special election.
at least 2010. I'd say.
Okay, special elections. Here we go.
So again, with just 6% reporting,
And let's see.
we're following this closely. Stay with us here. We'll stay on. We're in overtime, of course, soccer time.
Soccer
but a
time. I
very
like that.
important evening.
By the way,
We'd like to see if we could have a little sense of where it's going before we sign off.
She's
still right now. Last time I checked, you're looking here.
reporting now.
Here 9% reporting.
9% reporting.
That's fast.
Okay.
She's cutting into his lead. He's now at 63%. She's at 37%.
So it's about a 4,200 vote lead for Swazi. With we have 9% on here. You have a 10%,
And
9%.
Does that map
in
show
there.
you what's come in yet or not?
Let's see if this actually would go down to the district. They have in Nassau only 200 votes in so far,
So
and 60% of Queens is in already, and Swazi is leading Queens 63 to 37. So basically, this number is almost all from Queens. If this number holds, then Swazi will end up carrying Queens by about 8,000 votes. But again, that's probably about 10% of the district. It looks like it may be actually a little bit more than 10%. I had originally said about 8%. It might be about 12 to 15% of the district.
Yeah, it's very popular. It doesn't look like much when you look at it physically, but it probably is very heavily popular.
Yeah, I think this needs to be. I think she needs to cut into it a little bit in Queens. I don't think he can carry Queens by 25 points as he's up right now, and she can come back. I think it's got to be more in the 50s. Let's say if that number cuts in, which it can, you still have 40% of the Queens vote in. If that number can come down, let's say to the high 50s, and Pilip can win, let's say even it's the low double digits, then she'll be in a good spot to make this up in Nassau County. She's going to carry Nassau County. I'll make that call. I have no doubt that she's going to actually carry Nassau County. It's just a matter of, will she carry it enough to offset the Queens vote?
And that'll be interesting to see, Andrew, how much she needs to carry it by. Of course, with just 200 votes in, she has a slight lead, but again, just 200 votes. So it'll be interesting. The next ballot drop might really give us some real insight where this race is headed.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Mayor, did you spend
How many in from
Nassau? Just 200 votes.
nothing?
Less than 1% of the county. So we don't know.
Okay.
So we can't. That's really one
this
precinct,
is
most likely, one voting location.
95, 98% Queens.
Yeah.
Yes, and Queens about 40, as Andrew had said, about 40% of the vote is in Queens.
Yeah, I'm actually now seeing 60% of the vote.
That's right.
Yeah.
60% of the vote in Queens. So it'll be interesting. How many votes did Swazi need in Queens to kind of shore up his prospects, right? I mean, he probably suspected he wouldn't do as well in Nassau, so he probably spent a lot of his time in Queens. I'd suspect.
Yeah,
and we're trying to rack up the votes there.
Yeah, I think that's right. Also, one of the things that was interesting was he ended up putting a campaign office right in the heart of Mozzie's district, her hometown in Great Neck. So that was really Swazi looking and saying, okay, what can we do? And for those who don't know the district very well, Great Neck is right on the border of Queens and Nassau, just on over there, but would really kind of be considered the western part of this district. So he ultimately knew where he needs to make hay, and he realized that Great Neck, Queens are places you need to rack up votes because he'd probably lose others. You think about kind of the strongest part of this district. If you go and look, and the district does a little bit of like an inversed L over here, and the bottom part is Massapequa. Now, a lot of people will think of Massapequa because of the Rex Harriman killings recently. Obviously, there's a lot more to Massapequa.
That's Massapequa Park.
Yeah,
over here.
Yeah, you're right. Actually, that's Massapequa Park. But Massapequa,
I know it well.
You're right. But Massapequa is actually in the district, so not the park.
Used to be heavily Republican.
You are correct.
Didn't you have a rally there?
Massapequa is very, very Republican, very conservative.
That rally?
That's where Mozzie can actually really do that.
Rally that we went to.
we've had Belmore.
Oh, my home,
Belmore,
hometown.
absolutely,
My hometown.
in Belmore, and then have gone to Jones Beach, obviously, and did that. You have some great Patriots. The Belmore Patriots are amazing Americans
But this is a
out
part,
there.
you see,
But
you can
but this area right here going to be very,
Yeah,
very
what-
conservative. The southern part of the district.
Let me get this picture. Maria,
So-
she's getting me a picture of it.
Yeah. If you were to look at this district, and anybody who sees, if you were to lay 95 out, the southern part of 95, Mozzie needs to win that 75-25 in order to carry the rest of the district. And I think that's an area that she probably will carry very well. That
Right
southern
now,
part of the
there's
district.
almost nothing in from Nassau. 202 votes, and she's winning 51-49 in Nassau.
Yeah, still no updates on my end on this.
That's right. We are watching this closely. Stay with us. We're giving you the latest numbers. And so as we sit here, Swazi holds a lead over Pilip, 10,258 votes to 6,021 votes. So that's about 16,279 votes. That's about 9% they're calculating. So as Andrew said, that puts us at over 160,000 total votes, pushing 170. And so to win this thing, it does appear that we're looking at what, 90,000 about?
So we're
85,
gonna
90,000
take a-
votes to win this.
Yeah.
thing.
We're going to take a short break.
We'll take a quick break here. We'll hear from another one of our great
We'll
sponsors.
be right back.
And we'll be right back.
Device is something that you can plug into your television. And now you can use your television as a social television type experience. So in the Portal universe, you can watch your favorite content creators' videos, live streams, music. We also have TV subscriptions as well.
TV
so
subscriptions,
you can also
Regular channels, all the sports.
Right, you can actually cut your cable from your cable subscription and get QUX TV on our QX TV boxes, and you can pay half the price that you're currently paying for your cable television subscription, and you can get all the best premium TV channels and more. I mean, it's really, there's so much on there, Rudy. I mean, you've seen it.
No, I've seen it and I use it, and it's good. I mean, it's great. It's just exactly the same except for half the price. Plus, nobody is finding out what I'm watching, and that's not being reported to anybody.
Right, so you have absolute privacy using this device, which you don't have on other devices out there currently on the market.
This is absolutely great. QUX.TV is how you can find out about it. QUX.TV.
Use promo code RUDY to receive $30 off.
Okay, welcome back to America's Mayor Live. I'll be holding down the fort for a couple minutes here. We just had a new vote dump here that has come in, and it has Tom Suozzi right now leading by a little less than 5,000 votes with 12% of the vote in. Looking again at the amount of voters in this, right now you've got 22,000 votes that have come in total. That's 12% of the vote. Doing that math, so 22 times 8.5 is how you do the math. You would get 185,000 votes. That's going to be the total. 185,000 people have voted in this special election here over the last few days and tonight and today for either Mozzie Pilip or for Tom Suozzi. So that means that the candidate that gets 88,000, we'll say 90,000 because you never know how these votes sadly end up dumping in, and sometimes that denominator ends up changing. It's just kind of crazy, but that's how it happens. The candidate that wins 88,000 to 90,000 votes will end up winning this race. Right now, Tom Suozzi, 13,500 votes. Mozzie Pilip at 8,700 votes with 22,000 votes in at this point. That means Suozzi's up 60% to Mozzie Pilip at 39%. At this current moment. Again, looking at this, it looks like 72% of Queens is in. That's the western part of the district. That's going to be the part that is going to be more pro-Suozzi. Suozzi is racking up a pretty big lead in that part of the district. He's up by 24% with 72% of the vote in. I think that this number needs to get a little bit lower for Mozzie. I think it needs to be in the high 50s in order for her to make up the vote in Nassau County. Nassau is definitely about 4 times the size that the Queens part of the district is. So she's going to have more potential voters to make up that number in Queens. But she doesn't want to get blown out in Queens here because, again, it is still pretty populous and it is still tough. We don't really know what parts of the district in Nassau are still out yet. So depending on where it is, depending on what it's been looked like, you could look at Massapequa, right? That would be an area that Mazi Pilip should carry by 40 points or so. But then you look at the northern parts of the district there. I mean, you can go think back to the Great Gatsby, the Little Egg and the Big Egg, right? That would be areas that you would expect Tom Suozzi to carry, even though those areas recently have started to go more Republican. You think of the Persian community in Great Neck, for example. That used to be a strong Democratic area. That's become very, very Republican recently. And I think Trump had a whole lot to do with that. And that's kind of where Mazi Pilip is from. She is from the Great Neck part of the district. I should say that's where she lives. We obviously know that originally she is from Ethiopia, ended up immigrating to Israel and has been here in New York for the last 17 years, been a Nassau County legislator. Amazing backstory. I think that's one of the things that has been really incredible. And you think about somebody who has, been immigrated to this country, a two-time immigrant, if you will, to now be running. Whatever concerns that I have about her, and I've certainly expressed those, it is a pretty amazing backstory here. We have another vote dump in, and Tom Suozzi has actually extended his lead at this point. He's up almost 6,000 votes with 14% of the vote in. Again, it is from Queens, so it is from the more pro-Suozzi part of the district here. But Suozzi is up with 25,000 votes in. He's got 15,000 votes to Mazi Pilip's 9,600 votes. That's a lead of 61.5% to 38.5%. Right now in Nassau, there's only 3,000 votes in at this point. The bulk of the votes that have come in so far are from Queens. So to give you some perspective, there are 22,000 votes. I know I'm throwing a lot of numbers out, so let me try to slow down with these numbers in particular. I've been a numbers guy. That's kind of one of those things that I am. But in looking at this, Queens, 22,000 votes in. Nassau County, just under 3,000 votes in. So obviously, Queens having a real big say on the early votes in all this. Mazi Pilip will cut into that lead. There is no doubt about it. This is not going to end up at 60-40. This is going to end up much, much closer to that. The question is, with Tom Suozzi winning 63-37 in Queens, has he blown her out of the water by too much in Queens to not be able to recover in the Nassau part of the district? At this point, if Suozzi is able to lose Nassau only by a couple of points, then he still will carry the district. If Pilip might need to win Nassau County by 8 or 10% in order to carry it. Not impossible, but very, very difficult to do. So we'll look forward to the next voting dump here. But like we've said, 14% of the vote in at this point. Tom Suozzi with 15,470 votes, and Mazi Pilip with 9,670 votes also at this point. And we're back with America's mayor here. Welcome back. I heard that you said hi to Grace. How's Grace doing?
Grace doing great.
What does Grace think about the special election? Any ideas?
She thinks it's very close.
So I asked Grace if she wanted to come on television today, and she said yes. And I said, well, what do you want to talk about? And she said,
out of that one.
she said, mommy. And I said, what do you want to say about mommy? She loves mommy very much. So she just got out of the pool, so she's indisposed at the current moment. But I wanted to send that message to mommy, to my wife. She loves you very much.
Well,
is
now
what my daughter, your granddaughter, wanted to say.
How do you account for the fact, if this is right,
Yes.
the 82% of the New York City polls have reported, only 2% in Nassau.
Only 2% of Nassau County. By the way, Suozzi with a slight lead.
It is fascinating. And even look at the vote totals here, right? I mean, so you're talking 8 times the votes have reported in Queens than in Nassau.
Are Republicans holding the vote back?
Well, here's the thing. I I do remember
would
from
accuse- We
experience.
would accuse them of that.
I do. Here's the interesting thing, and I could talk from experience, particularly about these counties. In the gubernatorial primary, New York City reported before Long Island reported. And so I remember that because obviously that was an area that Congressman Zeldin did very well in, right? His home county was Suffolk. One of his early supporters was Joe Cairo, who was the chairman of Nassau County. And so when we were looking at the numbers at the early returns, I like the numbers that we saw in New York, but we knew that you still had Suffolk and Nassau that they still had to report. So the fact that Nassau is late to report, this seems to be kind of consistent with what I remember in the gubernatorial primary. Again, still at 14% of the vote. Most of Queens has reported, 82% of Queens has reported. That's giving Swazi a pretty big lead early on of nearly 5,000 votes. But again, Nassau is going to be where Mazi Pilip has to make hay. It's where she will ultimately make or break her campaign. And only 2% of Nassau County has reported. For perspective, if you look at this, if 2% of Nassau County and you've got 2,900 votes, you're looking at about 145,000 votes out of Nassau County. 145,000 votes out of Nassau County. In Queens, you're looking at about 40,000 votes. That's the difference. 40,000 in Queens, 145,000 in Nassau County. So you can see that it is 3.5 to 4 times as big as the Queens section of this district here. So the Queens section,
Geographically, it's unbelievably bigger, as we'll see in a minute.
yes, but you know how dense that part of Queens is.
That's true.
Yeah. So it's more city versus suburban, as you would think. Although that area in Queens still has a lot of suburban-ish areas right there. Right? Whitestone is obviously a wonderful area. A little more votes here. Looks like not much significantly
Yep,
here.
same.
Just a few hundred more
And
very similar
Nassau
numbers.
County has reported all of 2,800 votes to 23,000 votes reported in Queens.
Yes. So again, good for Swazi. The fact that
Queens going to go to about what, 30,000 votes?
Queens should go to close to 30,000 votes. That's correct. It should be. I've been saying 40,000. That number might be a little bit high. Looking at these numbers right
No, if
now,
that's right, it would be 2,300.
you're right. You're looking at about 30,000.
Yeah,
It's about 30,000 votes in
800.
Queens. So yeah,
Are you at 14% of the vote?
we're at 14% of the vote.
Okay.
Tom Swazi with just under 16,000 votes, couple votes
That's
under
right.
16,000. Mazi Pilip is 10 votes under 10,000. Let's call it 16,000 votes for Swazi, 10,000 votes for Mazi Pilip, with 26,000 votes in at the current moment.
And 100,000 or so in Nassau, would you say?
There should be a little more than 100,000 in Nassau. I was thinking about
About
40,000.
but 26 or 27,000 in Nassau, in Queens.
Yeah.
And maybe 120,000 in Nassau,
Yeah.
of which only 2,000 have so far, almost 3,000 rather, have so far reported.
That's right.
Well, you're right. If he keeps his 63, and it's getting down near the end now, I think he's going to end up. I would say it's almost certain that he is going to end up. I think it's almost certain that he's going to end up over 60%.
Yeah.
Would you say?
In Queens, yes. I think at this point, and I think that's about the best that he could expect in Queens. I think Swazi has probably done about as well as the campaign can expect there. Few more votes have come in, it looks like, in Nassau County. Not much. We're getting the last 2 dumps have been, this is now 200 votes, and pretty much the same margin here. You've got Swazi at 16,082 votes, Mazi Pilip at 10,100 votes at the current moment. So similar numbers. Again, it seems like that last vote dump came in also from Queens. So 86% of Queens is now reported in the district here. Should be let's see where we are.
I'm gonna try it one more
Same
time.
vote dump over here. I'm trying to get some info here from people that are on the ground. Just kind of the stuff that you're hearing in all these places you always hear in campaign headquarters. We're feeling confident and all that stuff. Not really great intel to be sharing, but everybody's feeling
Once in
confident.
a while,
Everybody's feeling confident.
once in a while,
Yes, everybody feels
you
confident.
hear somebody crying in the background.
That's true. You probably have that going on in both camps right now, right? You'll have tears on both ends of this thing. So
Election day, get real nervous.
that's true.
It's
That's true.
always interesting to see how different people take it different ways.
Yeah.
How are you on election day? I know one guy would go to the movies. He went to the movies on election day. He's like, I did everything I could.
We
It's over.
we used to play ball a little bit.
Yeah.
Remember, one
I
more.
guess you had three. You had 3 election
We
days.
got one more. One more we're gonna try.
So with 14% reporting, yeah, with
See if I
14%
can get
reporting,
this.
Swazi coming in with 61.6% to Pilip's 38.4%. At what point does this lead become insurmountable? Is it way too early? Is it way too early?
You,
for
you
that,
have to
or-
see more in Nassau, right? So here's the thing in Nassau. I expect Pilip to carry Nassau, but it's
Can't you carry it
by enough to overcome
to
the Queen.
carry it by about
Queen's Court.
56%, 57%.
Yeah, and even I would say if maybe even a little less. I would say if it is double digits, if she can get 55% of Nassau,
Yeah.
then she wins. That's but if it's single digits in Nassau, then the math starts to get a little bit tough here because now 89% of the vote in Queens is in, and he's got a 24% lead specifically in that part of the district. So we have 27,000 votes are in. Swazi is up 16,500 to Mazi's 10,500 votes. So a 6,000 vote difference, almost exactly 6,000 votes, 6,500 votes, 6,005 votes.
That's right.
Is the lead that Tom Swazi has over Mazi Pilip at this moment.
1,000 votes left to count New York City.
27.
You have
10% of the vote
that
left.
is that seems about right. Yeah, let's look at that.
3,000 more votes to count, and you got over 100,000 votes to count in Nassau.
Yes, you have over 100,000 votes
And they
in
haven't
Nassau.
counted in Nassau.
They have
Somebody should be.
they
asking
have not
questions why.
counted.
No, I'm serious.
They did that in the gubernatorial primary as well. So this is something that I have seen a couple different times.
I mean, this is what the Democrats do.
Yeah, are you surprised?
You would expect to see these numbers to come up a little more, and you would expect because there are more votes here, right? You would maybe expect the Nassau numbers to be 10, 12% of Nassau in 22,000.
Is there a problem in Nassau County?
Uh,
I mean, they're first of all, I'm not sure if they're using the same machines.
mhm.
They're two. It's a little strange. This is going to be hard for a lot of people to understand. There are two different election jurisdictions here,
Right.
which in a way actually is a check and balance on cheating.
That's true. That's
th-
true.
there
Tougher
isn't-
to coordinate.
There isn't one political in Philadelphia, it's like a democratic dictatorship. It's all
Mhm.
Democrats. When you say the election workers,
Right.
Yeah.
they all work they all have their job from the Democratic Party.
Yeah.
They work in the Public Works Department. They work here. They work there. If they're told to cheat, they got to cheat or they get fired. Here you got two separate counties, both of whom have patronage. I don't know how the Democrats are standing for the fact that the Republican side isn't reporting. 89%, if you consider Queens is run by the Democratic Party. The county leader is a Democrat. Everybody working on those election machines there with a few little inspectors who have very little to say are Democrats. And they've counted all their votes. Now, same thing is true on the other side, not quite as strong because Republicans have only controlled now for a couple of elections. But it is Republican. The Board of Elections is Republican control.
County executive, right.
And they're not giving up the vote.
Yeah.
So depending where these votes came in Nassau County, so there's a chance that they're in a specific area that's favorable to Swazi. This isn't looking good though for Mazi.
Yeah,
This is not
it's tough to
looking good.
really tell with how few votes are in with Mazi, with Swazi.
Come in Nassau.
Yeah,
County.
that's the thing. You're talking about 3,000
Come in
votes.
in the places that are, if you tell me Great Neck is going to be Swazi. He was the mayor of Great Neck.
Mhm.
So he's going to do well in Great Neck. You start going. Massapequa.
Mhm.
Port Washington.
Go up there. Now,
Well, Washington, that'll be Swazi territory.
That'll no, but
right?
up here, yeah, but over here is going to be Republican. Up here in the
You're talking about the northeastern side of it there.
coast. That's one of the top 10 per capita income
Mhm.
places in the country
Right.
up in that area. It used to be the Gold. It used to be the Gold Coast.
Mhm.
It isn't quite the Gold Coast now, but it ain't bad.
Bring up let's see if I can bring up the 3rd congressional district here so people can get a real, because
Yeah, this is good to take a look at.
it's not looking good, but of course, as the mayor and Andrew
It is still early.
have been saying, it's early.
It is still early. And again, another vote dump, all from Queens at this point. Has it
Now he slipped.
actually Mozzie's cut into it a little bit, but still almost a 6,000 vote lead at this point, 16,630 votes to 10,720 votes.
90% cast.
So 90% of the votes have been cast in Queens. So you're looking at only another 2,500 votes being cast in Queens. So you're right, looking at less than 30,000 votes in Queens, about 28,000 votes in Queens, when you'll probably be talking about over 100,000 in Nassau.
So we have on the screen a map of the 3rd congressional district.
Right.
And
Yeah.
if you notice there, over on the western side, that's the outskirts of the city, right? That's the Queens parts.
So if you're
to-
looking at it from your television screen,
Yeah.
you go from left to right, right?
Yep.
That little area up in the right, that that would be
That's Queens County.
that would be Queens County.
Yeah. And Whitestone, we're looking at Whitestone in that area there. That actually, Whitestone has actually been a conservative part of the city for the most part.
I'm surprised the vote is that strong.
So I am too. I would expect that to be. Vicky Palladino has been probably the most popular city council member in New York City. She's somebody who's railed in the culture wars against drag queen story hour, against some of the major issues that have been facing our education department. She worked to get one of the migrant shelters out of her district there in College Point. So this is something, when she ran and won re-election just a few short months ago, she ended up winning by 19% of the vote. She won almost 60-40 in that district there.
This district takes in.
And it is a little bit of a different district. I need to say it is a little different. It's not the exact same district. There are definitely certain areas that are added to it that help Swazi in this.
But putting Queens in helps Swazi. That really, theoretically, if you look at it geographically, that should have been an old Nassau County district. It takes up more than half of Nassau County.
Right.
Takes up about 3/4 of its land mass and probably 2/3 of its population.
That's true. But thinking what it could have been, we were talking originally New York 3 was going to be a 5-county district.
Right.
It was going to be a half moon around the Long Island Sound.
Yes.
That was going to basically go from the border of Connecticut in Rye, New York. It was going to get Westchester County, the Bronx, Queens County,
we've had
Nassau County, and Suffolk County.
We've had 3 county districts before in New York because we're such unbelievable gerrymanders.
But this is going to be a 5-county district. And aside from, in the Adirondacks where, it's not very populated, it's pretty crazy to think that in New York City and suburban New York City, you would have a 5-county district, unless you were going to gerrymander, because it is, again, so populated.
So they're just trickling in these votes. We're still sitting at 15% of the total. Pilip cuts into the lead a little bit now. Swazi at 60.8%, Pilip at 39.2%, with again about 15% of the vote, which translates to 27,348 individual ballots. And now we're approaching the 10 o'clock hour. I wanted to stay on.
I would be surprised that if there hasn't been a complaint made about the Nassau County vote. If I were the Democratic leader, I sure as hell make a complaint.
Mm-hmm.
The Democrat Party. Why is Nassau County still not in?
1 hour after the polls are closed, we only have 2% in. That makes no sense. Somebody's doing something with the vote other than counting it and reporting it. How many times are they going to count it? 40? 50? They don't like the vote.
So again, here we are with
You close the machine, right? You go to the back of the machine, you read out the results, you write them down, and you call them in. That's at most a half-hour process, even if you have problems. That should have been over by 9:30. It has to be that every election machine in Nassau County has by now reported in to the headquarters the vote.
Yeah, I agree. I can't add anything
I
to
don't know.
that
I
except
don't know
you're right.
if they do it by computer, if they do it by phone, if they do it by both to double up on it.
Mhm.
But in any event,
for what it's worth,
how it's the same vote counting. How can you have 90% of New York City counted and 2% of Nassau County counted?
for what it's worth, Swazi is outperforming Santos and Queens.
Yeah, well, yeah.
So Swazi's doing better
Than
Than-
Nazi, you mean? Swazi's
no,
doing better
no.
than Santos in Queen. Than
Yeah.
Santos was doing. So say that again.
Yeah.
Where did Santos? What were Santos's numbers in Queens? Did it say that?
Yeah. Let me see
there?
if I can bring that
Yeah.
up.
That'd be good to know. That would be good to know where this actually ends up being. So I think then looking at this number, Pilip would have to win 54% of Nassau to try to make the math work here, right? She's down about 10,000 votes in no, not 10,000. She's down about 6,000 votes in Queens. So it wouldn't have to be that big even. She would have to win about 52 to 53% of the vote in Nassau in order to cover.
She'd
the
have
Queens
to have a
portion.
7,000 vote margin.
Yes.
To be safe.
Yes. About a 7,000 vote margin in order to win that. And let's see what Queens actually, what that number actually is in Queens over here. If I could pull it up.
So of course, some people we're following this closely. The numbers are coming in. Look, I'd rather be Swazi than Pilip right now. We'll say that much.
Whenever you're ahead, you'd rather be that person.
Unless, of course, depending where those votes are coming in, maybe.
Well, you haven't seen those
Yeah.
votes. If you could start seeing the vote in Nassau, you could start seeing possibly the same story or another story.
Yeah.
But it would be good to look at is there a map of the Santos race? Do we have an electoral map of the Santos?
We're going to look.
Bring that up.
We're going to look into that right now. New York.
That would tell you something.
Right.
So let's see here. Again, we're following the special election for New York's 3rd Congressional District to replace ousted Representative George Santos in what's a closely watched race, a swing district. Tom Swazi, someone who's represented the district before, so that's a last name people know, against Mazi Pilip, an Ethiopian-born American who also served in IDF.
Okay, so looking at this, Santos only lost Queens by 4% of the vote. Much different turnout. You're talking about 49,000 total votes in Queens. This is going to be about 24,000 total votes in Queens. But Zimmerman, who was the candidate in 2022, Robert Zimmerman, the Democratic candidate, he had 51.9% of the vote. That's 25,300 votes to Santos, who, as we know, was the Republican, with 48% of the vote and 23,400. 51.9 to 48. So a 4% margin in Queens. And it is, yeah. Now, Santos did carry Nassau County by 55-45, by 10 points. If Mazi was able to do that, was able to carry by 10 points, by my math, then she would win this race by about 3,000 or 4,000 votes. So if that Nassau number ends up being the same and Pilip is able to win by 10%, then she will be the next representative.
It looks like there was double the turnout in the Santos race.
Yes, there was double the turnout in the Santos
So
race.
what was the turnout out in what was Nassau?
Nassau was a total of 220 3,000 people, 223,000 people total.
And it was what was the breakdown?
The breakdown was 55% to 45%. So you're talking 122,300 for Santos, and almost exactly 100,000 for Zimmerman. So 122.4 for Santos, 100,000 for Zimmerman, for the Democrat, Republican versus Democrat. So in order for, and it seems like in Queens, it's almost half the vote, basically. So half of the people that voted in the election in 2020 voted in this special election. It seems like that number is going to be about the same in Nassau. It semes about half that number, a little over 100,000.
Right. Let's say 120,000.
Yeah. So if again, if Mazi ends up getting
And she has to make
55% of the vote,
right now,
she's got to make up about 6,000.
91% of the vote cast. She has to make up what?
She got to make up about 6,000 votes.
Got to make up 6,000 votes.
6,000 votes at this point.
So she, assuming she doesn't drop too much more here.
Right. Which again, if in Nassau she hits that 55% number, she'll do that. If she falls short of that 55% number, then the math starts to become very tough. That's why what I was saying before, where, Mazi, I expected her to lose Queens, but it really needed to be keeping Suozzi under 60%. Otherwise, then the math starts to get a little bit more tough. Because again, this stuff doesn't happen in a vacuum, right? Obviously, even though Queens is coming out, it seems to be significantly well in Suozzi's favor, you would also expect that to carry over into the western part of Nassau as well. So right now, the Queens numbers does look good for Suozzi. Again, 2% of the vote in for Nassau County. Still a long way to go for tonight. 15% of the total vote in. But Queens looking good for Suozzi. Nassau looks like Mazi Pilip is going to have to get 54, probably 55% of Nassau in order to cover this. Would you agree with that math?
100%.
Yeah.
She's got to pull out 65,000 votes out of 120,000.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah, that's right.
So that's about 55%.
Yeah, that's right.
She's got to make up. I mean, to be safe, that would give her a 10,000 vote margin. And by the time they're finished, when they get that other 10% in, it's going to be, it could very well be a little bigger margin for Suozzi.
So we're watching this closely, just 15% reporting. Mayor, still nothing from Nassau. There seems to be some sort of
It's the
delay.
hardest thing in the world. I mean, it's a 10 to 10, and they haven't.
I'm
Is that?
I'm asking a couple of friends here in Nassau.
Yeah, ask them where the sheriff is.
That is quite something. So we're really waiting on those numbers. It's hard to really read anything else into the race here. At any moment, we could get a big
I tell you,
big dump from Nassau.
There's a big jump, and she wins by 1,000 votes. We're going to have all kinds of.
Well, no, they're not. No, they're not. We're not allowed to question it. So we will have to remind Mr. Suozzi, you're not permitted to question. Yeah. Well,
It would
Yeah,
be,
Hillary Clinton can. She'll come in and she'll question it.
somebody is going to have to explain how the hell. What are they doing with the votes in Nassau? Are they voting again?
look,
Let's call up somebody in Nassau, see if they want to vote again.
well, how you guys feeling? Look, we can stay on all night covering this. It's,
I'm going to
good
stay on
insight.
we're going to stay on another 10 or 15 minutes so that we wait for that.
Give us a chance to.
I would like to see if sometime tonight, Nassau County.
You might be in for a while. I just want to remind you, your radio show is at 3 p.m. tomorrow. Nassau County might not have reported
Hey,
by 3 p.m. tomorrow.
Maybe
So
waiting for the weekend. Maybe they're waiting to the weekend.
maybe.
just
Maybe.
2% of Nassau County. And that is interesting, right? Usually it's the Democrat areas and the cities that are late to report. And I guess this is in general an urban district.
These are pretty similar.
Yeah.
These are all suburban. Even the Queens areas, you wouldn't be able to tell too differently from
Yeah.
right. Whitestone is suburban.
Yes.
These are
Yeah.
not, when you say city, it is technically city, but it looks just like Nassau.
You have some of the most beautiful Christmas lights in Whitestone in the country. Some of the most amazing. And the reason why is I remember the last time I was there was around Christmas, and I was just blown away by how beautiful the Christmas displays were in Whitestone. Exactly.
It's as suburban as much of
The reason,
much of that.
Right.
But,
Right.
but you get a very, very big portion of that's about, when you look geographically, that looks to be about 2/3 of Nassau County. And it goes right up to the border with Suffolk. The only thing missing is the South Shore. And you get some of the South Shore.
Yeah. Trying to look
And
for.
I correct myself. I think Massapequa Park is in there.
Yes.
Isn't it
Well,
interesting?
Massapequa
Isn't it-
is, but I don't know if Massapequa Park is. I think you were right about that.
Look what's missing.
Yeah.
Just a little piece down by the ocean.
Yeah.
And by the way, Jones Beach, home of the Gilgo bodies, is not in this district.
that is not.
It's in somebody else's
We
district.
we went out there, we investigated, we had a whole, I've gotten to know Long Island, but it's not always the
There's
most.
got to be some Republican or Democratic reason why these were moved. If right here.
So again, with just 50% of the total reporting almost an hour since the polls closed, Swazi maintains a lead over Pilip, 60.6% to 39.4%, but don't let that 20-point margin fool you, as Andrew and the mayor have told us. So that number will most definitely shrink.
So D'Amato's
And come
area
closer.
of Nassau is left out of here, which would be Republican.
But
The
does
areas where Al D'Amato won are all down here
Philip
in the
have
southern
votes?
part of Nassau.
outstanding to
here.
catch up.
This would be Republican, right? All in here.
Mm.
So she doesn't have the benefit of that in here. Then you start to move over. You move over to the 5 towns, and that's heavily Jewish.
Now, what name the towns you're looking at
And
now,
who
Mayor?
knows? Who knows?
What city are you talking about?
Who knows? I was just looking at Massapequa,
Because I have the map up on the
Massapequa
screen-
Park,
on the screen.
Massapequa, Baldwin, Belmore,
Amityville,
Amityville. I think is a little beyond.
just beyond. But those that know about the Amityville,
Horace.
say that.
No, Amityville is
Amityville.
Amityville is in the next county. It's in this ends at the
Suffolk.
Nassau County border. The
Okay.
next county is district is another district, and it's in Suffolk County, and there are. I mean, basically these are big counties. There are roughly 2 million people each in both of the counties.
You know, our
So you're talking about 4 million people. Oh gosh,
that's the people.
you're talking about 2, 4, 6. It's about 8 million people on Long Island.
It's amazing, by the way.
About there's a little off. 2 in Brooklyn, 2 in Queens, 2 in Nassau, and 2 in Suffolk.
I wonder if that serial killer's home. His home's right on the border, right there.
I don't know because I don't know if it goes.
I'm zooming in.
I don't know if it goes south enough to cover
Look at here.
his
Got the
home.
district
Yeah,
lines
yeah.
right there.
You see Massapequa Park?
So it's in Massapequa, but it's East Massapequa is not in the district. So that's why we've been kind of, is Massapequa, is it not? Because it literally is, part of it is
And
not.
we have on the map here Massapequa.
I don't think
Park.
I think he's I think maybe they cut him out.
Well, maybe he's cut out now, and as he should be, right?
Nobody
Nobody was campaigning for his vote. We'll put it that way.
They want to put him in some other district.
Yeah.
So we come up north, or Bethpage. If I'm mistaken, is there a golf tournament?
Of course.
Oh, is it-
Bethpage?
Is it not only a golf tournament, the Ryder Cup will be held at Bethpage next year, as a matter of fact. The Ryder Cup, the United States versus Europe. It'll be a wild scene. It's going to be great. You got to watch it next year.
It has to be
Held 2 U.S. Opens.
public golf course in America, right?
And then
In my opinion,
Levittown-
yes.
Levittown has
Unless you want to consider
It's the best deal that you'll ever get. You can play Bethpage for less than $70 if you're a New York State resident. And it's great. They have a warning sign before you get to the golf course that says, "Warning: this is for highly skilled players only," because
Break your back.
it's
remember playing.
it's the closest thing. It's the closest thing that golf will ever get.
He was about 6
Full contact.
I was about 105, and we were playing golf, and it was about a 98-degree day. He didn't want to stop, and we got to something like the 12th hole or the 13th hole. I thought we were on the 17th hole. And I said, I said something to him like, "What? This is the 17th hole, Andrew. What do you want me to hit?" Dad, it's the 12th hole.
It does. It does.
Only.
Yeah.
It's a very hard course. Even if you go to a tournament, it's a hard course to walk. Unlike let's say Augusta, which is a very nice course.
Yeah.
To walk the way it's laid out, and this is laid out.
So, and next to Bethpage, of course, is Levittown. Is that the original Levittown?
You're damn right. It's a little.
And for folks that don't know, obviously Levittown, I'm guessing the man's name, his last name was Levitt.
I assume so. He built the homes after the Second World War.
So what we consider now
New York and Pennsylvania. Yeah.
the cookie cutter suburban
For the
communities
VA mortgage,
started right there in Levittown.
based on the VA mortgage,
and the
home for the veterans. And there was a great Levittown in New York. There's a great Levittown in several places in Pennsylvania.
okay. And then we move up here. So this is where we're waiting for most of the votes to come out. Here this is Long Island. We'll zoom out so folks can see where we're looking here. This is Long Island. Here's New York City over to your left. And New York City actually extends out here onto
New York City is, so people understand this, 5 counties of New York State. All of that isn't marked out is New York City, except for the very beginning part. So the first, can you put your arrow on that first part right there?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's Queens. You're in Queens there. Now go down to the bottom. Take it all the way down to the bottom. But now you just went to Kennedy Airport. Now you're at Kennedy Airport. Now go further
out.
Go further in. Down. Now you're in Brooklyn. Well, that's Brooklyn. That's Brooklyn. Okay.
Yeah.
Got it. That's Brooklyn. Okay. Now go
down.
Go out to that little thing all the way out there in the water. It's a bit of a. Keep going. That's Long Island. You're touching there. No. Move it up a little. Move the map up a little. You're not seeing. No, the other way. Move it down a little. Move it down. You see that little body of something there? There's Staten Island.
Right here, you're looking?
That's Staten Island. Yeah, that's Staten Island.
Right here's Staten Island, right? What are you showing us?
Oh, it isn't Staten Island. Where? They're not showing Staten Island on a map, Andrew. Where?
That's Staten Island right here.
Yeah, that's Staten Island right there.
Where?
And it's it looks like it's in there, but that's actually Staten Island here.
Oh, right there.
But they don't actually mark it. Why don't they actually?
Oh, there it is.
It's Richmond. Richmond County. That's Richmond County. But yeah, there it is.
Yeah, there. Yeah, Staten Island.
Interesting, right?
There's Staten Island, as you can see, closer to New Jersey than New York, but we own it. Then, if you go across,
Bayonne. What's this? Is this
Bayonne? That's all New Jersey. Now, see, Financial District. That's Lower Manhattan. That was the Manhattan for 300 years. That was it. That was all what you are showing there up to the. That's it. That's it. That's it. Forget it. Never was going to grow beyond there. It was said in 1800. 1800, when they built City Hall.
Yeah.
And they put the cheap limestone on the back and the good marble on the front.
On the north side, but that's an amazing.
That's a funny.
The builder said nobody's going to live back there. Don't worry.
And I walk by that almost every day, and I think about that almost every day. That's kind of amazing.
Don't worry about it.
Nobody will
And
ever
then
live
when
over
the
there.
Cardinal later on, about almost it must have been 100 years later, moved the cathedral all the way to Midtown Manhattan. They said, "You're crazy. All you're going to have are a bunch of farmers and hicks going to the cathedral." Now it's probably the most valuable property in America.
Yeah.
But that's Manhattan, boy.
Well, we're an hour in here. It's
Because we have penalty kicks for the soccer time now, right? We're in penalty kicks right now. But still, only 2% of the vote in Nassau County is in.
Could it be that the New York Times is holding things back? It can't be that only 2% are in.
We're still sitting at it's 2%.
I'm trying to get updates. I still see 2% over here. None of my Nassau County friends have an explanation.
They're all in jail. You know what's really going on?
Santos isn't in jail yet. I mean, he's not a friend.
How long have we been at 91%? New York has stopped. New York City has stopped putting in votes.
That's right. I'm pretty sure we've got all of Queens in by
Because
now.
if they maybe weren't watching as they were sending the votes in, but if they see 2% in Nassau, they're not going to complete their vote. They're going to say, God damn, we're not going to do this. We're going to hold back some votes.
Well, we're just getting individual precincts, and they must be coming from Queens. But we're getting like 10 more votes at a time now. As I sit here, we're getting 100 votes here, 100 votes there. And that's all we're getting at this point in time.
Well, they haven't changed very much.
They haven't changed much. They're trickling up. You'll get 100 added here, like just now, another 100 added.
Mm-hmm.
And
And again, you're talking about a 5,800 vote lead at this point.
And so that's still way too close to call, especially considering the outstanding votes in Nassau County.
Yeah. We have a new vote. Wait a second. 52% of the vote in.
Oh, God.
And this might be the dagger here, because right now you have Tom Suozzi at 55,000 votes to Mazi Pilip at just under 39,000 votes.
That's it.
With Suozzi up 58 to 42% in Nassau County.
With 45% cast. If that's accurate, it's over.
So basically then in order to, and again, we don't know where this is coming from in Nassau County.
That almost doesn't matter.
But she would have to win 70% of the remaining vote at this point.
Yeah, I mean,
she'd have to win about 70% of the remaining vote.
There's no way he should be beating her in Nassau, and he's beating her badly.
Yeah. So again, you're looking at a over 16,000 vote lead at this point for Tom Suozzi. Nassau County is supposed to be a place that Mazi Pilip should carry it. Queens, we expected Suozzi to carry it, although it'd be close. If Tom Suozzi even loses Nassau County by 1% or 2%, he's going to be the next representative here. He's actually winning Nassau County right now by 16% of the vote, with 45% of the vote in.
Right now, the vote looks like a wipeout.
Oh my goodness.
It does look like a wipeout at this point. Again, you might not have Massapequa, you might not have the pro-Mazi place in, but it's a lot of votes that Mazi has to make up right now.
If somebody called the vote right now, it would not be unfair.
This is getting called, isn't it?
No, you should call it. I mean, this is with if you've got 58% of the Republican county and 62% of the Democratic county, where are you going to get your vote?
This is getting called.
I mean, I guess if I were calling it, I don't get to see the districts it came from, but you'd have to say that, gee, that Nassau vote came from only Democratic districts.
I mean,
I doubt it.
Yeah, 55,000 to 38,000 votes. She's got to make up 17,000 votes. I mean, and Nassau, I guess these are heavy Democrat parts of Nassau coming in, or he maybe just had a better turnout operation. And also, he was that last name's well known in the district, right? Where her last name, she's brand new.
He represented the district twice before. And it was roughly the same. There were little differences, but roughly the same. And he is a Nassau, even though Democrats do better in Nassau, in Queens, he's a Nassau County politician. He was his father was the mayor, I believe, of Great Neck. He was the mayor of Great Neck. His father was a very distinguished,
and it's been called
definitely appellate division judge.
The Associated Press,
maybe even State Court of Appeals. I'm not sure. I don't remember.
And we have called it. We called it before, but the Associated Press has called the race for.
Yeah, I thought so.
But we knew that once that last vote dump came in.
Yeah, the minute you see the 58 and 45 in, it's over, and an exciting race turns into a boring race.
Yeah,
I said this before polls closed, and I've had my suspicions early on.
Madam Mazi.
You continue to
Ms.
go
Mazi.
And I think it's one of the issues that one of the top couple issues that Americans are looking at, the way this justice system is going after patriotic Americans right now. And it is beyond disgusting that you can't have a clear answer for somebody who's going to be a representative. And I think a lot of conservatives were questioning whether or not this is somebody they want to represent, on top of the Santos factor, which was certainly a factor that I think sometimes the first-time Republican voters, they might have said, you know what, we're not going to come back over and vote for him. And then you did have somebody who was a known factor in Swazi in the district.
And she would, although a great resume, no experience.
And she kept
No experience.
look,
One term in the county legislature.
she's a registered Democrat. She's a registered Democrat running as a Republican. That's a problem enough.
It sounds like she made more noise than she produced.
I think you're right.
First election that I lost, I got 49% of the vote.
Yeah.
47% of the vote. That's when you know you can run again.
Yeah. 48% of the vote in New York City, too, by the way.
In New York City, it was the highest number any Republican had gotten in 50 years.
I'm going to read more about
Grace
how
is
this.
crying because the Republican lost.
How does this
No,
Actually, I'm going to pick my wife up at the train right now. So I've got to go and run. I promise it's not because the race was called. I promise. That's it. Here, I gotta go.
your daughter is crying because you didn't share with her your doubts about Maisie.
Oh no, Andrew was a.
She thinks a real solid MAGA Republican lost, and the poor kid is going crazy.
You got to read about how
She
this.
knows her
Well-
future did.
Well, now Nassau conservatives will get what ultimately they wanted, which I think they'll get a real primary where you'll be able to ultimately have the people decide whether or not they want a conservative or somebody who is a Democrat, I guess. Best way to put it. That's what Mozzie is.
Did one person make this decision to pick Mozzie as our nominee?
It was
Cairo.
it was Cairo and this. And by the way, when I look at the vetting process that the Nassau County Republicans have done, you've had Santos followed by they picked a Democrat. I mean, what the hell's going on with their vetting process? Honestly, what's going on in the vetting process? You picked a guy who said his mother was in the 9/11 towers. She wasn't even in the country. Who said his grandparents escaped the Holocaust. They did genealogy reports. They never actually were in Poland or Hungary at all. And you pick that guy. And now, what do you do to follow it up as an encore? You pick a Democrat. What's going on there?
Andrew, did it ever occur to you that maybe they were holding the votes back because they were embarrassed?
Maybe.
Embarrassed. They were hoping. They were hoping that.
Maybe.
They were hoping that they would call it before they had to put the Republican vote in.
This must not be true. They
I'm-
couldn't believe it.
I'm gonna let you close this one out. I love you. Okay.
All right.
It's been an honor to join America's Mayor live tonight.
Yeah, we can have you back on for a follow-up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I look forward to that. Maybe even tomorrow I'll pitch you in a little bit and we'll give a
calls and
take a
mortem.
We're going to do a 15-second commercial so we can.
Yeah.
Okay,
But
perfect.
Just see if you can do see if you can do a follow-up and find out why the delay.
Yeah, exactly.
Is an amazing chemical laboratory. When you give it the right chemistry, it functions the best. Balance of Nature is the ultimate whole fruit and vegetable chemistry.
Get 35% off your first order by using discount code RUDY.
Yeah, it's too late.
You're good. You're good. So we're back. Thanks for joining us. So, okay.
It was an interesting night, huh?
Anticlimactic ending.
It's great. I mean, it's great to analyze an election like from the inside with a guy who just ran, Andrew, and a guy who ran many times, but quite some time ago. And therefore, there are different perspectives. Interesting perspective on Maisie, who I had on my radio show two or three times. And it was on my radio show that she gave the ambiguous answer about supporting Trump should he be convicted, which I really attributed it just to lack of experience. But Andrew saw more in it than I did and probably was right, particularly when you consider the switch from being Republican to Democrat. And she actually is still a Democrat, still a registered Democrat. She said she would change before she went into the House, but I don't understand why they didn't require her to change before they gave her the nomination. But I try to stay out of local politics. Sometime I'll tell you why.
Well, obviously Andrew was onto something, Mayor.
It's very sharp.
Look, we picked a Democrat. I have to read about this. I just and now it's easy. All the knives are going to be out, right? When the results come in like this, people are going to be very.
Well, there's a big, I don't know if you've picked it up when we've been out at America's warehouse, but there's a big split in the party in Long Island between the conservatives and between the MAGA people and the old Republicans. There's a big split going on. And I think you might have seen some of that here. Maybe we'll even talk to Joe DeBox tomorrow and see if we can get his take on this. I'd like to know who he was for.
Well, we went longer than the Super Bowl on this one.
Yeah. It's an interesting thing to watch.
But we stuck it out until the
we were
results
able
came
to
through.
call it before anybody else.
You did. We called it first. So on that note, Mayor, we're well into our third hour. Well, we're not well. We've just started the third hour.
We had a good time, and I hope everyone enjoyed it. And I hope they got an interesting little insight into local politics that has a big national significance, because this narrows the Republican margin in the House of Representatives, I think, to 2 votes. Please say a prayer for Speaker Johnson. Seems like a good guy. I don't think he's long for this world, not because he doesn't deserve it, but because when these guys get vicious, they get vicious. I tell you. We'll be back. We'll be back tomorrow. Don't forget WABCRadio.com at 3 tomorrow afternoon, and then tomorrow night back here at 8 on X, or if you prefer Rumble or YouTube, but I like X. And then if you go right now, if you still want to stay up, I mean, if you're energized and you want to get a real idea of that Supreme Court argument and how it's going to go, I've got that on America's Mayor Confidential. It's a nice, tight legal analysis that I think you'll understand really well. So when the opinion is decided, you see how smart I am, or not, and it'll give you a perspective on it, be able to decide it. And also, we go through the Her report and how it is a really much more devastating than it appears, and also the things he didn't follow up, because Biden was keeping documents that were incriminating, and nobody's telling you that. But go listen to it on America's Mayor Confidential. And there's one in particular, one incriminating document. It's a tragedy that nobody's following it up. But we're going to make a big deal out of it. Well, God bless you. God bless the people of Israel and pray for them. God bless the people of Ukraine. Whether you support giving them money or you don't, the people don't deserve this. They're good people in Ukraine, with a crooked government, but good people. And God bless the people of the United States, of course. God bless America. Is to bring to bear the principle of common sense and rational discussion to the issues of our day. America was created at a time of great turmoil, tremendous disagreements, anger, hatred. There was a book written in 1776 that guided much of the discipline of thinking that brought to us the discovery of our freedoms, of our God-given freedoms. It was Thomas Paine's Common Sense, written in 1776, one of the first American bestsellers, in which Thomas Paine explained, by rational principles, the reason why these small colonies felt the necessity to separate from the Kingdom of Great Britain and the King of England. He explained their inherent desire for liberty, for freedom, freedom of religion, freedom of speech, the ability to select the people who govern them. And he explained it in ways that were understandable to all the people, not just the elite. Because the desire for freedom is universal. The desire for freedom
adheres in the human mind, and it is part of the human soul. This is exactly the time we should consult our history. Look at what we've done in the past and see if we can't use it to help us now. We understand that our founders created the greatest country in the history of the world, the greatest democracy, the freest country, a country that has taken more people out of poverty than any country ever. All of us are so fortunate to be Americans. But a great deal of the reason for America's constant ability to self-improve is because we're able to reason, we're able to talk, we're able to analyze. We are able to